all here. Today we run these forums once a fortnight, on a Wednesday at 2, and this week's subject is all about data mapping and why data mapping is important. So to give you a bit of background on to why, about me. My name is Keith Budden. I run a company called Insurity. Our thing is about that we are the people who make GDPR fun, because if it's fun, it gets done. If it's a bore, it's a chore. So we believe in making it fun. And so we like to keep things fairly light, but equally we like to keep them practical and give people real practical tips in what they can do. So we're having these workshops once every fortnight, covering a different subject every 2 weeks. And the way it works basically is that we have about 25 minutes each from me, and then we take questions primarily on what we've just been shown. But then if we've got time after that between then and quarter to 3, should say, then we will take just any general questions that you might have. We do aim to end bang on 2:45 sharp, so everybody can get on with that afternoon. So let me start the presentation, and away we'll go. So let's share the screen. I want to share that screen. I want to share that. So you should now be able to see my screen, which is brilliant. So here we go. Data mapping. So what we're going to cover today is why data mapping matters under GDPR. We're going to look at the key elements of a data map. We're going to look at the steps to create a data map. We're going to have a little talk about tools and best practices, and as I say, we'll take any Q&A. So why does data mapping matter? Data mapping really does have a crucial part to play in GDPR, and even more so in the last couple of years. It's something which the ICO originally didn't pay that much attention to, I think it's fair to say, but now they are. And so it's really important to, if you're going to be seen to be GDPR compliant, that you have your data mapping in place. And it is also now a compliance requirement. GDPR Article 30 sets out that you must have a register of processing activities, otherwise called a ROPA. So you hear people talking about a ROPA, that's what they're talking about, which says you've got to have a register of not just what data you have, but why do you have it and what do you do with it? And often one of the easiest ways of explaining that is via a diagram rather than pages and pages of text. So what are the benefits of data mapping? Quite aside from that requirement of GDPR under Article 30, but what are the benefits of it? If you've got good data mapping, then you're easily able to demonstrate compliance with Article 30 to the regulator. So if you do have a problem and the ICO comes to visit you or asks to see some of your documentation, then being able to provide them with data mapping and the register processing activity is a good step towards keeping the regulator happy, which is something we all want to do. It reduces the impact of data breaches. It's not going to stop you having data breaches in itself. Of course, it isn't, because that's not what it's there to do. But it reduces the impact. Why? Because if you can see via a diagram where data's flowing and you have a data breach, at least you know what else might be affected or where else it needs to go, or indeed where that data's come from. And therefore, if it's a virus, for example, then might give you a good clue of where did that virus come from that's now causing a problem with your data. So a good diagram can make the impact of data breach much less. And having it as well, again, because you can demonstrate that to the regulator, reduces your chance of getting financial penalties under GDPR. It's something the regulators can be pleased to see, is if you've got a good Article 30 register. And also it increases transparency with data subjects, because if you get a data subject access request from a data subject, and they want to know what you actually do with their data, not necessarily what data you've got about them, but what you actually do with that data, then being able to provide them with maybe just a simple A4 page with a diagram on it can be a very easy way of saying, well, this is what we do. We get the data in from here, we process this with it, we process that with it, and then at the end we store it, and we store it here, and we keep it secure, and then after X number of years we destroy it. So what are the consequences of non-compliance? Well, they're getting stricter, it has to be said, because most people are probably aware that under GDPR and under UK GDPR, the regulator, the ICO, can impose a fine of 4% of your global turnover, which can be a substantial amount of money to a large company, or even even if you've got a turnover of £1 million, 4% of it is a fair chunk of money. But I would say don't worry too much about the fines. That's easy to say. Worry about the reputational damage, because if you get into your whatever your sector is, your sector's press, or even your local press, that you've been fined by the ICO, and they are very good. And the ICO is not perfect at everything, but they are very good at sending out press releases about people they find. Then that can have a damage to your business reputation. And the new thing, which has only happened in the last 3 months, really, is the threat of imprisonment, or rather, no, that's probably a little overstating it, the threat of a suspended prison sentence, because there have now been 2 cases where people have had breaches of GDPR and have received suspended prison sentences as their punishment. And that's really bad news. That could affect your personal credit rating. That could affect all sorts of things. It could affect you going for a job if you move on to a different job. So, yeah, you really don't want that. And I don't want any of my clients to ever be worried about the fact that they could have a suspended prison sentence. And of course, any breach of GDPR might disrupt your operations, and that has a cost, which probably only you can measure, but it has a cost. So what are the key elements then of a data map? The first is data sources. So you need to think about everywhere that you get data from, that you get personal data from. So you might get personal data from LinkedIn. You might get personal data from a form that someone fills in on your website. You might get personal data from a handwritten form that somebody fills in, from a CV that somebody sends in applying for a job, from an application form for your service, if your service is such that you need somebody to fill in an application form for it, a registration form if it's a patient or a pupil. That all these different places that you get data from, personally identifiable data information from, then you need to list down those data sources. So where do you get each piece of data from? Then what data subjects are they? And I don't mean individual people's names, but classes of data subjects. So, are they employees? Are they clients? Are they pupils? Are they patients? Are they directors? Are they shareholders? Who are the data subjects that are affected in this data? And then what type of data is it? And this is where you were getting down to fields of data. So, is it fairly innocuous stuff like somebody's first name, last name, and email address? Or is it something far more than that? Is it, is it house data? Is it their date of birth? Is it their sexual orientation? Are they a member of a trade union? All these things are called special category data under GDPR and need to be covered with more care than just things like name, address, and email address. And then what about your data processors? Because do you actually do all your processing yourself, or do you outsource any of it? Do you have a payroll bureau? How do you know that they've got their up-to-date ropers, that they've got their Article 30 registers up to date? Have you ever seen them? And I always say to my clients, a good test really to see if your data processors are GDPR compliant is say, can I see your Article 30 register? Can I see your register of processing activity? Because if they haven't got one of those, then chances are they're doing lots of other things wrong as well. So that's a question to ask to anyone who has personal data from you. So to payroll bureau, to anyone who processes that data for you, anyone who maybe prints newsletters for you, anyone like your accountant who might have the information. What have they got it clearly in place? What they do with your data, or with your data subjects data, I should say. And then once you've got all that, then you draw a diagram to map out the data flow. And there's this example on the left of the screen here, which you keep seeing. But it's often something like that. So data comes in from the top from a source and then works its way down to a different if, if this, then it goes to this box. If it's something else, it goes to a different box. And then it comes out at the end to go into a data store. Because then the final part of this whole diagram, the final part of this mapping is data retention and destruction. And again, this is something which in recent months, the ICO has got much stricter on. They now want to know for sure each of your types of data, how long do you keep it? When do you destroy it? And just as importantly, how can you prove you've destroyed it? So how can you prove that you've destroyed something securely, that it doesn't exist anymore? Because if you have a data retention policy or in your ROPA, you say that you keep payroll records for 3 years after the employee's left, and the ICO auditor goes to your filing cabinet, opens your filing cabinet, and finds payroll records from 6 years ago after the people have left, you have a problem. Something like that, is it going to get you a fine? Possibly. Probably a slim chance of getting you a fine, but what it is going to do is going to get you a full audit. And you really don't want a full audit because the ICO, in doing its audits, wonderful people that they are not particularly quick. And so it's not unusual for them to have one of their auditors at your premises maybe 1 day a week for 12 weeks. And that's a lot of your management time tied up dealing with that person. So you really don't want a full audit. Even if you come out of that full audit with flying colours and apart from your data retention, everything was fine, you've still lost probably 12 days of your management time dealing with that. And I would suggest you don't want to do that. So, step by step. First step, as I say, is identifying the stakeholders who are, and this tends to be looking at your organization. It's fairly easy. Well, it is easy if you're a one-man band or if you're a two-person company, because the stakeholders are you, probably. But if you're a organization that's got many, many departments, then you need to think about which of those departments are actually holding personally identifiable information. So you want to look at sales, you want to look at marketing, you want to look at HR. If you've got a pensions department, you want to look at pensions. You've got all these different departments that you want to check with as to what personal data do they have, and get them to do this bit for you. Get them to do the diagram for you. What do they do within their department with the data, even if they pass the data on to another department? And I'm going to come on to a case study towards the end of this, but this can be quite time consuming. Because often, particularly your business that's been in business for a while, actually identifying who the stakeholder is, who owns a particular piece of data, is sometimes not that straightforward. You find some data and like, who uses this? I don't know. I don't use it. Do you use it? Do you use it? And it can become quite a trail to find out what's going on. So once you've done that, then you need to do a data collection audit and look at what data you actually have. So we've got stakeholders now. For each of those stakeholders, what data do they actually hold? What do they hold it on? Who do they hold it on? Then get them to map out the data flows. So where does the data flow? Where does it go? What happens to it? Categorize and prioritize. And this is important too, because if you've got a marketing department who all they're dealing with is people's first names and their email address, frankly, they come bottom of the pile in terms of priority, in terms of what you need to be worrying about. Be much more worried about payroll, because payroll holds lots of information on people. And again, remember, part of the whole thing with GDPR is about data minimization. So again, particularly with HR, try and work out what they hold on people and why. And if they can't come up with a quick reason as to and why, they probably shouldn't be holding that piece of information, whatever that piece of information is. And a favorite thing that I do when I'm out with clients is to sit in front of them and when they come up with the and why, and then say, okay, so you've come up with that and why, particularly if it's taken them a few minutes to think about. So then say, okay, so would you then be willing to add your honor on the end of that and why? So if it did get tended to court, would you be prepared to stand in court and say, that's why we hold that piece of information, Your Honor? And is it still relevant? Because I'll take a real world example. I have a client down in Kent, and about 8 years ago, they held a golf tournament, a sort of pro-am golf tournament for their clients. Great fun. 8 years later, they're still holding on to all the scorecards from that golf tournament. Why? Why do you need that? Bit hard to justify why you hold that. You don't hold it. Get rid of it. Destroy it. Assign responsibility as well. So once you've done this and you've got these diagrams from each department, then assign somebody to be responsible for it, because these things are living documents. They need keeping up to date. Because, if you suddenly change your software supplier, well, then you need to update your register, your Article 30 register, because it's not relevant anymore. If you're looking at a new project and perhaps you're carrying out a data privacy impact assessment, who's going to be responsible for that? So assign responsibility across the business groups as to who's going to be doing what. So you keep them alive, because they do need reviewing and updating regularly. As I say, it's very important that they're a living document. So what tools do you need to do this data mapping? It really depends on how complicated your processing is. I mean, I deal with companies, let's say, from small 2 and 3 man companies right up to 2 companies in the FTSE Top 100. And one of my companies in the FTSE Top 100 just uses Excel spreadsheets and diagrams that they draw by hand. So it doesn't necessarily need to be expensive to get what you need in to do this. If you do want to use software for spreadsheets, I've put an example there, Lucid Chart, which is just a piece of software I've used, but I don't have any tie to any particular piece of software. There are many that are available. There are also companies, ourselves included, who will come in and do your this bit for you, who do the mapping for you. So what's the best practice for maintaining compliance? The important thing is continuous monitoring. Is about making sure that you're making sure that these diagrams and this data that you have is being kept up to date. Because if it's out of date, really it's worse than not having it at all. It really is important that it's up to date. And that's about training and awareness, is about making sure that your employees have received GDPR training and that they're aware of the importance of the diagrams and why they should have them. And I attended a conference with the ICO about 10 days ago now. And one of the things that came out of there was, I mean, they've already introduced, and hopefully everybody's already doing this, they've already introduced the thing that you need to record when your employees had GDPR training and who provided it to them. They're now saying is that if that training was more than 12 months ago, then they're going to consider that inadequate. And so the training has to be repeated, or go for refresher training every 12 months. They're also indicating the same on DPIAs, by the way, that data protection impact assessments should be verified every 12 months. And the important thing with, as with everything with GDPR, is document everything. And stay updated on the regulations. And how do you stay updated on regulations? Well, part of it's by doing things like we're doing today. On the alternate Wednesdays, when we don't have the live sessions here, we do publish a LinkedIn newsletter. So if you're not signed up for that, do go to my profile and sign up for the newsletter. And I'm sure that Dorcas can put the link in the material when we send it out to you tomorrow. And I want to talk about case study. For this case study, I'm going to pick one of my clients who is in the FTSE Top 100. I'm not going to name them because of commercial terms, but they're currently in the FTSE Top 100. They've got about 1,000 employees in the UK. We started working with them on their ROPAs, on the register of processing activity. It took us probably 2 months to work out just who all the relevant stakeholders were, because each time we spoke to somebody and suddenly found a new report, it was like, oh, who's responsible for that? Oh, I don't know. So you wander off down the corridor and try and find out who produced that bit of report and why they needed it. But once we did that, we got it all data mapped, and it was fantastic. It took us about, I think the actual data mapping took us about another 4 weeks of actually mapping it out and getting everybody to agree it was right. So in total, we'd probably used 4 months, I guess, from start to finish. Bear in mind, it has to be done now. Recommendation is to refresh it at least every 12 months. We've just started the refresh for this year. Their company year runs September to September. We've just started refresh for this year. We think we're going to be finished with the refresh of their ROPAs by mid-November this year. So it's going to be a bit quicker. And hopefully by next year, it will be a bit quicker still. But it does take time, because it's quite surprising, however much you do this, how much you train people, how much you have sessions like this. Somebody brings in a new piece of software that they're using, or they suddenly say, oh, yeah, well, so-and-so was doing printing all our labels, but we're not using them to print our labels anymore because they're too expensive. We're using this company instead, but we didn't actually tell anybody other than the accounts to make sure they paid the right person. And so the actual registers are out of date. And so it is, for a company of any reasonable size, it's not a 5-minute task, I suppose, is the point I'm trying to get over. Don't think you're going to start today and you'll have your register processing activities all done by tomorrow, because you won't. Because the other thing to think about, and I mentioned it before, is what about your data processors? Because anybody who's doing processing for you, then they need an Article 30 register too. They need a ROPA register too. And my guess is a good number of your data processors probably won't have done it. And that's no disrespect to any individual company. It's just in my experience, lots of companies have not done their Article 30 registers, because up to now, as I say, not actually something the ICO's put too much attention onto. So how do we get your data mapping underway? How do we get you started? Well, hopefully this has given you some input towards that. My contact details will be on the next slide, and if you've got any questions at all, obviously I'm happy to take questions now. And I'd also love to have a quick fact-find one-to-one with each of you whenever you get sort of 20 minutes to spare. Let's get a date in the diary and let's have a chat and see what we can do. But as I say, that finishes my presentation. I said it'd be about 25 minutes, and it is actually 24 minutes and 59 seconds. So I'm quite pleased with the timing on that. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other. And if anyone has any questions, I'll gladly try and answer them. Tarina, welcome. You weren't in the draw when I started, so I've just seen you.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much.
Anyone any questions for me?
I've got
Either about what we just covered or just about GDPR in general. Tim?
yeah, I've got one regard. So I deal with a lot of physical, not just documentation. There's also hard drives, for example.
Right.
So they might have come from a dead machine, they might be dead drives themselves. But if you get them to the right person, sometimes you can get stuff off them, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I've got a company that I use to take them, that takes them away, wipes them clean for me, and they send me proof of this. They even send me a photograph of what you drive down looks like, a little cube, for example. That kind of thing I normally do. I do keep a copy of that on my, against the drive, against the record of the whole, the job record, as it were. Does that current, say, does that sound like it complies with all the current regulations?
Yeah. I mean, the important thing is, as you say, you're getting a certificate back from them saying that it has been securely wiped.
Yeah.
Now if it's subsequently emerged and there was data from it, then yeah, you'd be in a fairly safe situation of saying, well, I've got this and it says it was securely
they
wiped.
send me, I give it to, they come and collect them securely. Then they wipe them, but then they also turn the hard drives into these little tiny big giant car compactor, basic, it's miniaturized car compactor. But as long as that's what I've just checked, does that still, we'll say, compliant? So
yeah, the worst is when you say to people, what do you do with your whole hard drives? Oh, we just set them up in the cupboard, and it's like, no, that's not a good idea.
the biggest thing, I found people with laptops, they go, well, what you done? Oh, I've just put it in the bit. I've wiped Windows clean, put it. Well, yeah, and then they give it to me. I go, I can get your data from 10 years ago off that drive that you think you deleted.
Yeah.
And then I prove it. So this is why I asked about, in terms of, and some of this is business stuff, some of it's personals, but there still might be passport, there might be, keep scans of driving licenses on there for a time. So
no, it's very true. Well, it's an old adage I use of what's the best way of wiping your hard drive? Hit it with a hammer. Is it still in one piece? Hit it with a bigger hammer. But yeah, it's it is important, and people don't think about it. I mean, it is scary to me the number of people who think, well, if I just go into Windows Explorer and I highlight everything and I delete it, then it's gone.
No, I can get it back from that.
Sorry, and it's like, no, it isn't. But I've seen people do that and then put the PC on eBay or whatever, and it's like,
I've had it with. That's why I say that, because I asked, because I've had it with a customer who's bought a machine to me and gone, there's some stuff on there I didn't put on there, and it was well, won't say what under, as it gets over, say GDPR, but it was not the stuff you want your child seeing, I am going to say, but I think you see what, and it was, they didn't know how the child got it back.
Yeah.
But it was a second-hand machine, got it off someone, but that's why I asked the question. So
yeah. No, that's a good point. It is important. Tarina, you got any questions?
I don't. I don't. It's been useful as a refresher. I'm as a translation company. We handle lots of data from clients, from collaborators, I'm quite up to date, I think. Things always change, and it's always good to have a refresher of what's going on. It's always to remind ourselves what we should do. And but we certified twice. We had cyber essential certifications twice. So I'm quite up to date, I think, with. I mean, I always try to be mindful of data protection, and we translate very sensitive information. So I'm always very mindful of that and careful. So yeah, every now and then I say, well, this project, these files, we don't need them anymore, so I just delete them.
Yeah.
And probably a question that is coming sort of as an afterthought. I work a lot on the cloud, on secure I mean, cloud storage.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's easier for me. I work from anywhere. I can work from anywhere in the cloud. But so something I do. So, for example, Dropbox or Box and that kind of stuff. So what I do is when I see a project that we haven't been working for a while, or we don't need the documents anymore, I just delete them. But I delete them from the cloud, and I guess I don't. I think there's always a time limit that it goes to the trash, and then after 30 days,
Yeah.
it disappears. So I presume. I mean, my question is that safe?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it depends on who you're using. If you're using somebody like Dropbox or Box, then yes, because they obviously are aware of the regulations themselves. The only thing I would do though is check with them where, because obviously though we say in the cloud, obviously the cloud is always a physical machine somewhere, is to find out from where that machine is. And if you have an option on your account, most providers do. If you have an option on your account to keep the data within the UK or within the EU, then do. Because what you don't want to find is that they are storing that. I mean, I mean, again, using one of my clients, a very real world example. They say, "Oh, we store data in the cloud; it's okay." And then we actually found out the machines were physically located themselves in Ukraine, which was not a good place for them to be. So
Yeah.
we actually got same company, but got them to store their data instead in Germany rather than Ukraine, just because Germany is okay and Ukraine, obviously for various reasons at the moment, isn't.
Yeah. On that point, I can add there's clients that have approached me where, how to put it, they want servers in certain countries. But if you go on the basis of where I've got clients that are in the financial sector, if you go on the list of the countries that aren't allowed to trade with, for example, that's usually a safe guide for where to have servers based.
Yeah.
Because what they work in lines with where there's war zones, you're not, and there are servers. But I've had a request for someone in the last 6 months. Could I have a server, but I want it based in Russia because that's where their head office is. Whereas obviously at the moment, and it was no, you get the
Yeah.
idea. It was not a chance. You have it over. If it's over, it's not being somewhere. So
Yeah.
I just thought I'd add there. That's my checklist is the financial safe register. I think is the way to put it. But
Yeah. No, it is. It's always worth checking because, yeah, sometimes as I say, because people just think of the cloud, and I mean, I use the cloud. We all use the cloud, I'm sure, these days. But yeah, it's finding out where physically that's stored. I mean, some of the stuff that I do use is Amazon Web Services, but I make sure that I only uses Amazon Web Services with servers either in the UK or the EU, so that none of the data actually goes outside of that space. Rachel or Shaker, do either of you have any questions? If you do, I'm happy to take them.
I've got no questions, thank you. It's been really informative.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rachel. Shaker,
Yeah, same as me. I haven't got any questions, but thank you very much.
okay, no, that's great. Okay, well, has anybody got any more questions? Otherwise, we can all get on with our afternoon. No, okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. It's really good. We're never quite sure every fortnight quite how many people we're going to turn up live compared to the number who register. But we do send out recordings afterwards. But I will say to people who attend, it's always better to attend live if you can, because obviously you do get that chance to ask questions. So with that, I will wind up for today and look forward to seeing you all in a fortnight's time. And don't forget, as I say, on alternate Wednesdays to this, we have our newsletter comes out on LinkedIn. So if you're not signed up for that, please do sign up for it.
Thank you,
Thank
Keith.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.